I'm Jessie, and I have an eating disorder. This is not something that I ever thought I would speak about and record myself speaking about and then post for anyone who wants to see. I've been thinking a lot lately about the impact that I want to leave on the world. I really want to share parts of my story, and I want to hopefully reach people who have a similar story, and I want to really burn all of the stigma around eating disorders and mental health, because it's very real, and I want to talk about kind of what caused it, events that led to it, patterns that led to it, and then kind of where I am today. I'm not going to go into detail about certain events that I've gone through in my life. I will mention them kind of surface level, and then maybe at a later point I'll kind of dive deeper into those events when talking more about trauma and things like that. So I guess I'll start when I was very little, when I was in elementary school. I always had very low self-esteem. And that was it was intensified in school because, you're in school, you're in a school environment with other kids. I also, I grew up with an undiagnosed learning disability. It was diagnosed and only really pointed out to me when I was a freshman in high school. So I grew up really thinking that there were so many things wrong with me. I grew up thinking that I was really stupid, that there was something wrong with me because I couldn't read and understand what I was reading. Numbers didn't make sense to me. It was this completely different world that I couldn't dig my heels into because my brain couldn't grasp these concepts. My brain kind of works like a canvas, I have to paint, and I have to, that doesn't make sense, but I don't know, I see things in shiny colors and glitter, and I see things a very different way than you're supposed to see when you're growing up. I grew up and I had depression from the time that I was very little up until now. Never stopped. It's a continuous timeline, really. And that really fed into these negative thoughts that I had throughout my life. There was a lot of pressure. When I was in first grade, I had a teacher who really was very unkind, and I felt that she had singled me out. And so in first grade, I did everything in my power to not be myself and to be like another student who she seems to really favor. And that was my first experience of actively trying to change myself to fit this idea, to fit this perception of somebody else so that other people would like me and accept me for me, even though it wasn't me. When I was in middle school, I went to college. No, I didn't go to college. When I was in middle school, I would take my parents' money and I would go to CVS and I would buy weight loss pills, and I would hide them in my closet so no one would find them. I mean, like, when I was in middle school, to understand the extent that I hated myself. I hated myself, and I hated myself because I thought that the world hated me and that there was something so wrong with me. I was always a quiet, introverted child, I grew up with anxiety. I had a lot going on in my brain. In middle school, there was middle school was really hard for me. I'm not going to go into specifics at all in this video, but I will say that I did endure quite a bit of bullying, and I went through a trauma in middle school where I really needed help. I tried to speak out and I really needed help, and the response was that people didn't believe me. And I think for someone who goes through a trauma at such a young age, the thing that you really need is for someone to kind of hold you in their arms and just, put a blanket around you and say, it's okay, I believe you, you're not crazy, you're not all of these things that people are saying that you are. So the years of really just feeling so inadequate and uncomfortable in my own skin culminated to this point where I felt like nothing in my life was going right. I was really ostracized quite a bit. Going into high school, it didn't get much easier. College, I went through 3 pretty awful, sexually traumatic experiences. I'm not a doctor in any way. I'm not a therapist. I don't specialize in this type of work. But I will say that, looking back today on trauma and abuse, the number that it has on a person's self-esteem and self-image, sometimes you don't even recognize the person that you are. You don't feel like the person that you are. You feel like this entire other being. I remember in middle school, I would, especially on Halloween, I would wait until my parents were sleeping and my brother was sleeping, and then I would sneak downstairs and I would grab a bunch of Halloween candy and I would shove it under my sweatshirt, quietly sneak upstairs, and I would put it under my covers, and I would listen really carefully to see if anyone was walking around, anyone was going to come into my room. And then I would just eat, and I would eat all of it, and I would feel so sick afterwards, and I would feel so disgusting afterwards, but I still did it. So many clear memories of me going down to the kitchen in the middle of the night and just bringing food up with me and just waiting until everyone was sleeping and then just eating all of it. And at that time, it was honestly the only thing that I looked forward to in my daily life. I was severely depressed. I was so anxious. I thought that the world hated me. I thought that everyone was against me. I thought that there was no hope. And the only thing that gave me comfort was food and shoving my face. I've danced since I was very little. When I was younger, I attended a dance school. But I remember wishing every time I was there that I was different, that I remember wishing maybe if I was more outgoing, maybe if I wasn't so introverted and shy and anxious, and maybe if I wasn't depressed, then maybe my dance teachers would like me more. Maybe someone would really take me under their wing. And that was around the time that I started looking in the mirror, and I would spend every single dance class, especially in ballet, just obsessing over my body and how I looked in a leotard, and to the point where I couldn't even focus on the dance because I was so in my own head, which is really unfortunate because after that I went to a school where I was able to fall in love with dance again. And I went through a period of time in high school where I wasn't obsessing because I ended up going to a different school where I didn't know anybody, and it was a new space for me to kind of just be and just exist in a better place. I joined a dance team in college and I loved it. I loved the people on my team. I loved being able to choreograph and being able to create and being able to express myself. But I was always aware of the fact that I was larger, and I was aware of the fact that I was gaining weight because especially towards the end of college, I went through a phase in college where I didn't really speak to any of my roommates. I didn't really speak to anyone. I would go to class, and then I would go back from class. I would go into the kitchen. I would grab a bunch of food, bring it into my room, and not talk to anybody. And I didn't want to talk to anybody because all I wanted to do was just sit and eat all the time. I went to dance and I would just hate myself. I was always embarrassed. I was always so embarrassed of myself and humiliated and ashamed, which is so unfortunate because I loved dancing and I loved being there with all these people. And logically looking back, I don't think that any of them judged me. I think it was just me intensely judging myself. And then I went through a really traumatic event towards the end of college, and my entire world was shaken. And it really just challenged my entire perception of myself, which wasn't that clear to begin with. But if I could, I have so many regrets. I wish that I could go back. I wish that I would have, I could be more open. I wish that I would have told my roommates what was going on. I wish I would have told people on the dance team what was going on, told my friends, told my parents, told anyone what I was going through. So I spent most of college eating in my room and then going through periods where I would starve myself and I would not eat because I would be so ashamed. So what I have is called binge eating disorder, which is you binge, which is you just go through periods where you just eat and eat and eat and eat, and sometimes you completely you just leave your brain for a second. You leave your brain and you're not really aware of what's going on, and then you just eat and you just eat and you eat and you eat to feel better, to fill this void inside of you. But by the time that you finished, you feel physically sick, you feel sore, everything hurts, and you just desperately want to get rid of all of it. And you feel like a failure, and you feel like you failed yourself. You feel disgusting. No matter how bad you felt, when something else happened and you felt inadequate again, or those feelings of inadequacy or shame or, anxiety or anything, when anything would come back, you do it again and again and again and again. And when I went through these traumatic events, I developed PTSD, and food and obsessively binging and starving myself was the only form of control that I felt. I felt like that was the only thing in my life that I could control. So I would do it again. I would take food. I would lock myself in my room, not talk to anybody around me, and just eat and eat and eat and feel sick and then not eat. And it just got so bad to a point where after I graduated, I decided to stay in my college town for an additional year, find a job. My mental health and everything had gotten so bad that it was around this time that I remember I was with my roommates that I was staying with right after graduation, and we ordered food and I ate so much, and I felt this thing that I felt this overwhelming need to get rid of it. So I went to the bathroom and I threw up, and I knew in that moment that something was horribly wrong. And something needed to be changed because I felt like I was floating outside of my body and I didn't recognize who I had become. And I walked out of that bathroom and I felt like the world knew that I had failed. I felt like my roommates knew what I just had done, and I felt like everybody knew, and I felt like a liar because I couldn't bring myself to tell them what I had done because I felt so crazy. So I moved back home because I decided that I needed to get out of, that area that had caused so much trauma for me. Another thing with trauma, sexual trauma and abuse that people don't talk about is you don't feel safe anywhere you go, right? So you don't know who's safe, what's safe, where is safe, am I safe? I don't know. So a huge part of that for me was in college. In order for me to feel safe, the only place I would feel safe was in my room by myself with an entire pizza. I guess I'll just kind of talk about where I am now. So I reached out for help. I got help that I needed. I was in and out of therapy. I had to make a lot of changes in my life, and I had to really change things up for myself, and I had to do a ton of, trauma work and self-reflection and healing, and I had to do a lot, and I had to, recognize parts of myself that I felt uncomfortable with, but I also had to start for the first time in my life to recognize myself and put myself first. Right now, I'm doing okay. I had to learn a lot about who I am as a person and what I want in life in order to get to this place where food does not control me as much as it once did. I still have this nagging, constant nagging in my brain that tells me you're not good enough and you're not thin enough and you're, everyone is judging you and everyone is, oh, you gained a pound, everyone notices. I do know that it's possible to reach a place where I had so many things I was running away from, and I had so many feelings I didn't want to acknowledge, and I had so much that I was feeling, and I didn't know what to do with these feelings. And now that I'm in a space where I am able to talk about these feelings, and I'm able to reflect on these feelings, and I'm able to start really healing from elementary school. I'm still to this day working on healing adventures, definitely not adventures, experiences from elementary school, all the way up to now. I think that once you start doing that work, you just gain a much clearer sense of what the world can be and what the world is. I'm much more gentle with myself now. I was not gentle with myself before. I know that when I'm feeling something coming on, it's really that there's something inside of me that I need to work through, that I need to revisit. I'm experiencing something has been triggered, someone has said something that has caused me to, travel back years and years to this one thing that happened that really impacted me. I know that there's something that causes it. There's an underlying cause for all of these feelings, which is difficult it's difficult because with mental health, sometimes there really just isn't. Sometimes you just feel how you feel, and that's something that I kind of have to work between, because sometimes it's really, really, really hard being with my brain. But I'm in an okay place now. I'm working through it. I am, I'm taking it one day at a time, and I have people I can reach out to if I need to talk to someone. I'm in a place right now where I have really wanted and needed to put my recovery first before all else. I really desperately want to know myself, and I desperately want to know who I was when I was in first grade, and I desperately want to know who I was when I was in middle school, and I want to find those small people, and I want to just hug them, and I want to just reassure them that, it gets better. And lately I've just been feeling like I need to speak, and I need to start telling my story. It just feels like it's time. And yeah, I think there are probably many things that I missed out on in terms of speaking. I mean, in terms of life, yes too, but I mean like sharing all of this, I'm sure there's stuff that I've missed, but oof, it's been a hard go. It's been a real hard 26 years, but I am really hopeful that something good will come out of all of this. Yeah, because I think that there's been good all along. I haven't been in the mindset to see it. that. Okay, now I'm locked in the garage. Okay, bye.